Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for the second part of the lecture on the theories of motor learning. And before that, I would just like to give a recap on the transfer. So another one is on the cha-cha-cha dance. It could also be applied in some of the ethnic dance, especially in the tune of the sisiwit. Okay, so I know some of you are very familiar with sisiwit, and you can apply the steps of cha-cha-cha in that song. Okay, let's start with the Fitz and Posner on the three-stage model. So Fitz and Posner suggest that there are three main stages of motor learning, which are as follows. Number one, we have the cognitive stage. So the individual learns a new skill or relearns an existing one. So students need to practice the task frequently with outside supervision and guidance. It is important to make mistakes and know how to correct them in this process. So take note, ladies and gentlemen, the emphasis here is that it's okay to make mistakes. So of course the teacher should be teaching the correct execution of each steps, perhaps in dance or maybe in sports, and then lets you practice on your own. Okay, so of course you will soon realize that what you were doing is not exactly as what the teacher taught, and that's part of the realization. Okay, the second stage is associative. In here, the individual is able to perform the task in a situation with specific environmental restrictions, and students will make fewer errors during the activity and complete it more easily. So they will begin to understand how the different components of a skill are interrelated. So what are the environmental restrictions? It might be the surface of the area or the size of the room that you're doing the activity, or maybe the climate in which you're doing the activity. The final one is the autonomous stage. As the term implies, autonomous, because in here the individual is able to move in a variety of settings and maintain control throughout the task. And the true proof of learning is the ability to retain a skill and apply it in different settings through automatization, since practical situations in real life are generally random. So the learner is able to adapt in different complex situations to be able to perform the task. As compared to the associative, we talk about some specific situations. And of course, autonomous, once again, is more on the complex situations. Okay, so one good example for this autonomous stage is on the Panagbenga festival, where the dancers have to perform barefoot on the asphalt or the road going down to Melvin Jones. You could just imagine the blisters, the pains and sacrifices that they have, but in spite of it all, they were still smiling. No? So that is a very good example, as I've said, for the autonomous stage. We move on to Bernstein's three-stage model. So Bernstein's model emphasizes quantifying degrees of freedom, that is, the number of independent movements needed to complete an action or task, as a central component of learning a new motor skill. The first is on the initial stage. In here, the individual will simplify his or her movements by reducing the degrees of freedom. So what is a very good example for this? Maybe in our knees. So we learned our knees last time, okay? So instead of making use of 2 sticks, we only make use of 1 stick, and we will only be doing it in stationary movement or motion, followed by the advanced stage. The individual will gain a few degrees of freedom, which will permit movement in more of the articulations involved in the task. So we still have our knees as our example. So instead of doing it in stationary movement, we will already add some stances, moving forward, moving backward, or moving sideward. We have the final, which is the expert stage. Of course, the individual possesses all the degrees of freedom necessary in order to carry out the task in an effective and coordinated manner. So we still have the arnis as our example. And of course, you will not be contented with just 1 stick. You would want to make use of both sticks, making use of stances, the proper form, the proper execution, the proper discipline, meaning to say you shout, okay, in the designated parts of the execution, and of course you would want to make it faster. So you also take note of the speed. And lastly, the power. Another theory is on Gentile's 2-stage model. So we have the first stage includes understanding the purpose of the task and interpreting environmental information that is relevant in organizing movement. Okay, so the emphasis here is on the purpose or the objective of the presentation, as well as the environmental information for the learners or performers to be able to organize their choreography or presentation. Now, the second stage emphasizes on fixation or diversification. The subject aims to redefine movement, which includes both developing the capacity to adapt the movement to changes in task and in setting, and being able to perform the task consistently and efficiently. So here, the performers were prepared for a 10-minute presentation, but at the last moment, they were told that it would only be down for 7 minutes. So for here, for this stage, the performers will be able to cut some of the steps and retain only the highlights of the performance. And they can do it consistently and efficiently. So we are done with the second part of this lecture. And please wait for the next part, the third part, which is on the factors affecting motor learning. Please stand by. Thank you.